I'm Jordan Landrum. My wife is Renee Landrum, and I have two children, JJ and River. And we have been at Florence Baptist for 30 plus years. And we've been at the Hebron Church since it's opened, 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. So today I'm going to tell you a story about the Hebron campus, and it's not my story, it is Hebron's story. So we were at our 1 year anniversary. We had a big party. So Mr. Whitehouse, he brought one of those big blow up slides and a bounce house, and so very exciting for all the kids. Well, there's some apartments behind, and there were these kids all lined up. They were all just staring and like, oh, how do we get out there? And Matt Bowman, he's looking out there like, oh, maybe we can get these kids over here. And as soon as we get done, we pray, and Matt's like, all right, you guys, go. And, so Matt tells them they can come over, and immediately there's like 10 kids jumping over this fence. So all these kids are playing, and it's like, hey, so I'm like, hey, I'm one of the Sunday school teachers. We need to meet these kids. Let's go. And there's two kids that I really just clicked with, and that's Aiden, and the other's name is Kaiser. So Kaiser's kind of like the talkative one, and I like talking to everybody, so I get along with everybody. I kind of feel like that's how I blend in here. I'm like, you guys can come back on Sunday. We got food, we got snacks, and even on Sunday mornings, and it's okay, you can come, you can hang out with me. I'm one of the Sunday school teachers. And they're like, ooh, okay, I'm like, what time, So I'm like, hey, I'll be pulling in about 9:15. I'm gonna whistle, you guys come running. So Sunday morning comes along, I pull in the parking lot, and I get out, and I whistle really loud, and I got nothing. I'm like, they're not coming. We start, and I'm back there, and all of a sudden, Nancy comes running in. She's like, you're not gonna believe who's here. I'm like, what? Is Kaiser here? She's like, Kaiser and Aiden. I'm like, no way. And she's like, yeah. So I'm like, I walk out of the room just like, and I'm like high-fiving them. My day was just so bright. It was awesome. It was like, these two are here, and this came out of just us getting them some pizza and hanging out with them and just being their friend. My wife and I have decided to give and know that it's important to give because God tells us to. And right now, we give everything that we can give, and we are all in. Whether it's me giving, you giving, things like a 1 year celebration would never happen. We would have never met Kaiser or Aiden had it not been for somebody giving, so that we could have a party and order pizzas and have a slide. It was a story that all of these people were involved, and all of them showed these kids love. Without any of them, it wasn't going to happen. It was like the church made it happen,
We love having our kids in the room. Thank you guys so much for being here. It's a unique moment. We don't do this all the time. We do it on a fifth Sunday. We do this because it's strategic. One, it allows our K through 5 staff who do such a great job to be able to have a break. So we're grateful for them, and so we love giving them a break. The second thing is that there's something unique about having a multi-generational worship. Like, this is just really cool in this moment to be able to have kids in this space, to be able to sing together, to be able to worship together. It is what heaven will be like. There will be multiple generations, and so we're super excited to have them in the space this morning. And so our whole church has been going through this teaching series called For the One. This is a vision teaching series as we're just kind of walking through why we believe the church exists and how we can participate as a church in this. And so our kids have actually been walking through this as well, and they have commitment cards that they've been working through, and they actually did last week. And so that's really, really cool, and we'll actually see a little bit more about that toward the end of our session today. But we are all going through it together, and so I'm very excited about this. I want to just give you an update that as of this Sunday, we have a total of 93 commitment cards that have been handed in due to our early commitment night, which we'll talk about more at the end of the video, just for those who attended our vision events earlier on in the summer. And so that does not include the cards that were actually handed in by our students and our kids as well. So we've got a lot more than that. I just want to say thank you so much for your generosity in giving to Jesus by giving to the church at Hebron. And so as you all continue to pray about how God would have you participate, I just want you to kind of understand that there's already individuals that have jumped in and participated and are excited about what the Lord is doing, and just like you. Now, I want to give you a schedule for what's ahead. Mike mentioned this a little bit earlier on. We are actually, next Sunday is going to be our final week in this teaching series, and it's actually Commitment Sunday. So this is where we have the opportunity to be able to hand in our commitment cards as families, as individuals, and just, commit before the Lord that this is what we intend to give for the next 2 years so that we can see people reached with the good news about Jesus. And then on the 21st, which is 2 weeks from this coming Sunday, is our Big Give Sunday. And this is where we will actually hear the amount that we committed together as a church at both campuses, both locations to give. And then we will actually start giving at our new commitment level as well. And so just to give you a sense, that's Commitment Sundays next Sunday, and then 3 weeks from today, Big Give Sunday as well. Our goal is 100% participation. Now, we know that everybody's kind of at a different stage in their giving journey. Everybody, though, can do something. Equal sacrifice is what we're interested in, not necessarily equal giving. And so, it will look differently to each of us. It will look differently for a 8-year-old student than an 8-year-old child than it will to a 8th grade student, to an adult, who is just out on their own. And it's just going to look different in different places, but everybody can do something. And then the second goal is that we want to raise $16 million for phase 1 of our For the One initiative. And for our campus, that's going to include things like additional parking, and then also an outdoor kids play area. At the Mount Zion location, that's going to be a double gym and a dedicated student worship space. And so we're really excited about this. If you came in and you grabbed a For the One resource guide, I want to encourage you to open those to pages 19 and 20. I just want to walk through a section with you. Mike walked through the actual commitment cards. And I know in places like this, there can be a lot of questions, and then sometimes we've heard things about church and money and different things like that. And so we have misconceptions that we bring into this conversation. And so I just want to try to be helpful to you in this process. And so there's on pages 19 and 20 of the resource guide, and the resource guides, there are some on the tables there. Feel free to get up if you don't have one and go grab one. They're free and just give you a sense of it's a guide that will walk you through this journey and also give you notes for today's session as well. On pages 19 and 20, there's actually the giving journey. And there's kind of like 5 different givers that we see within a church, within a community. And so the first one is kind of this initial giver. And an initial giver is someone who kind of is about to take the first step in giving. Maybe never given before, but now feeling like maybe you want to start giving. And so this is the moment when you can choose to trust God and give for that first time. And even if it's just a small dollar amount, it's $1, it's $5, it doesn't matter. It's about trusting in the Lord and just simply obeying and giving that one time. And so that's kind of that initial giver phase. And then there's an emerging giver phase. The emerging giver is one who maybe was given just one time or sporadically, but is wanting to do this more consistently. And so you've kind of seen God's faithfulness over the course of time, and you're building trust in Him. And whether that means at this point in time setting up a recurring gift or maybe just a regular practice and rhythm of giving, you're seeking to become more intentional in that way. The third category of giving is an intentional giver. And an intentional giver starts asking deeper questions like, does my giving reflect what I truly value? You may be looking through your budget and start to see that you may need to realign some things. And sometimes in this process for the intentional giver, it becomes best to do percentage-based giving that helps best in the mission. And then the fourth category is like an open-handed giver. An open-handed giver sees everything as God's money. It's like no longer a source of fear or control. It's an instrument of worship. And so your question shifts from what should I give to God, what would you have me to do with all of it? And it's a posture of surrender that touches kind of every area of life. And then the last one is the lifetime giver. And a lifetime giver is really thinking beyond the month and beyond the year. You're asking like long-term questions. How can I structure my entire life to be more generous? From the home you buy to the way that you invest, your decisions are kind of shaped by this desire to make a kingdom impact that lasts far beyond you. And so these are kind of different stages of giving. We're all at different places in this process. Everybody is very valuable. And so our goal is 100% participation, and wherever you are in that journey, you are valuable, and the money that you give will be used to reach people. And so we'll be talking more about this next week, but we're really grateful for your generosity, and thank you so much for praying for this. If you are newer, just as Mike said, I would encourage people not to necessarily check out, but that's, I get what you're saying, but, so like just take it in, and it's not necessarily for you to kind of understand this in this process. And so, so just any questions, Mike and I are around afterwards, and we'd be happy to talk with you. Now, it's pretty interesting that we would show Jordan Landrum's video this morning about reaching our neighbors with the topic that we are going to discuss this morning. And it's pretty great that we get to have kids and students in the room to have this conversation, because we are going to talk this morning about the importance of reaching the next generation. And that God's desire is for us to reach the next generation. And so if you have a Bible, I'd like for you to turn to a book in the Bible called Deuteronomy. It's really early on in the Bible. So this is one of those weeks where if you don't know where all the books of the Bible are in the Bible, it's really great for you, because you can go Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. It's like 5 in, right? And this is great. And so we're going to start there this morning. We're going to go to a couple other passages as well. And I just want you to see the heartbeat of God for the next generation. And so kind of point one in the message this morning is simply this, that we must reach the next generation. We must reach the next generation. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 to 8. This is a statement to Israel, God's chosen people. They were following God, were trying to follow God, or were supposed to be following God. It's kind of a mixture in their history. And here's what Deuteronomy records for us. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give to you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. You see, reaching the next generation has a starting point. And it's not maybe what you think. It starts really with parents. It starts really with adults. And it actually starts with how we view God as parents and how we view God as adults. The text says that you and I, as adults, we need to love God. Personally, we need to be committed to loving God. And the text says that we need to be all in with our love, that we need to love God with all our heart and all our soul and all our strength. And that the best way that we can reach the next generation is actually loving God ourselves. That is the starting point for whatever else we are going to do. The text says that this content, this loving of God is to be on our hearts. And then the love that we have for God needs to make its way to the next generation. That we actually need to share it with our children. Often our children will follow what they see from their parents. If I could tell you the number of times, this is one of the things there's a little bit of joy and a little bit of dread as I think about this. The things that I watched my dad do growing up, the statements that he made, like the transitions that he would use from one subject to another, the inflections that he would have, his facial features, like when he was happy and when he was sad, the way that he walks, all those types of things that I was like, some things I really liked, some things I didn't like. I suddenly realized that I am imitating all of those things. And I find myself saying things to my children at times, and I'm like, my dad said the exact same things to me. And I'm like, at the time I was like, Dad, I have no idea why you're so angry about these things or why you're so passionate about these things. And now that I'm in the moment, I am 100% like, I'm like, oh man, I make a note, I gotta go apologize to my dad. Let's get back and like think about all those things, because you're like, I am imitating my dad, and it's not even a conscious thing. I'm just simply doing that. And it reminds me that oftentimes we as kids will imitate our parents. That is why it matters so much that we as parents lead the way in loving God. And I'll say this to the parents in the room who, when you realize this statement, like much like I'm realizing this with my dad, and I feel like the weight of that on my shoulders as I think about trying to help my kids experience Jesus. And I think to myself, I can't be perfect in this moment. And there's things that I wish that I would do differently and stuff like that. The examples that you set for your children is about trajectory. It is not about perfection. And so you may have screwed up a good part of your life, and you might be trying to change that now. Your kids will see the change. And so that change that you're seeking to make, maybe you have not loved God in the way that I should have, but now you are trying to change. Your kids will see that change. That will still matter. That example is still super important for your kids in this moment. Even if you've got a track record that you would love to not have repeated or not have done if you could do it over again, your present moment and your future is critical for your children as they seek to follow Jesus and experience him personally. And so it starts with us as parents, but it goes to our children. And we want to help our children experience Jesus and grow together and make a difference. And we want them to love God in the way in which we hope we love God. In order to do that, we need to help them as parents. We need to take the lead with our examples. Now, the church comes alongside us, and the church seeks to help us to be able to equip us so that we can be better parents and help us to be able to help our kids love Jesus. And we also try to provide in our environments here on a Sunday morning so that our kids love Jesus and they can hear and know Jesus. So right now in our kids space, our pre-K are experiencing Jesus and hearing Jesus taught. And if you have a child there, that what we're doing is we're trying to help you win with your children by helping them learn more about Jesus. And so that's a great thing. On a normal Sunday, our K through 5 is back there as well, and that room is packed, and it's packed with kids, and they're hearing about Jesus and about what he's done for them and how that connects with their lives, and again, helping to come alongside parents in that process. And that whole enterprise actually takes money. Like it just simply does. The materials, the supplies, the building, the electricity, the different things that we do with the kids and how that takes money. Jordan pointed it out that the whole 1-year anniversary celebration doesn't happen without somebody being generous in that process. And so we're grateful for your generosity. The bounce houses aren't free. The food's not free. All that kind of stuff, it takes money. As we think about this For the One initiative and what we're attempting to do specifically as a campus here, pavement isn't free. Or concrete, whatever we would choose to do. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but that stuff's not free. The outdoor kids play space, we've got a tremendous potential there to reach kids, but that's not free. The people that make outdoor play space really believe in its quality, and so they charge you commensurate with that, right? So there's a sense in which it's not free. But it matters. because it helps us reach people. And so we're looking to try to give environments for kids, environments for students, where they will hear about Jesus and where the Holy Spirit can do the work in their lives. And we believe as a church that we want that the majority of our existence is about putting environments in play so that kids will then experience Jesus, grow together, and make a difference. And it takes money for those environments to happen. Now, something that I think is important, that we don't always want to see the negative side of things, but there is a negative side to not reaching the next generation. And the Israelites experienced this in a book called Judges. And so, all right, let me go back to the Old Testament in a second. It's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges. All right, so we're like 7 books in now. In Judges chapter 2, verse 10, we see that Israel has forgotten God. They've abandoned God. And there are real consequences to not reaching the next generation, and the people in Judges are experiencing this. Notice what Judges 2 says. After that whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. And so in this moment, Israel, who didn't even follow God consistently for long periods of time, like they had their stretches, right, where they were obedient and faithful, but then they also had these long stretches where they were not. And in this verse, we hear of a stretch where they were actually obedient and following the Lord and loving God. And then the second part of the verse says, another generation grew up who neither knew the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. One generation failed to reach the next generation, and then that generation abandoned God. That is a sad story in the text. One generation failing to pass on their faith to another generation, failing to tell the next generation about the goodness and mercy of God. And that generation then abandoned God. We do not want to be the generation who failed to reach the next generation. Not on our watch. Not with what God has done for us. There's no way that we cannot help but pass that on to a future generation. So as we think about the For the One initiative and what we're trying to do as a church at both locations, the double gym and worship space at our Mount Zion location, the parking lot and the outdoor kids space here, and plus whatever else it is that we may actually end up doing here as a church, is about reaching the next generation. We want the current generation to be able to look back on the present and see the presence and power of God through a church that cares enough to share with them about the greatness of God and what he has done. Earlier on, I was mentioning just the beauty of being able to worship with multiple generations, and there's such a beauty in that. But one thing I was thinking about, those of us who are in the older generations, and I'm putting myself in the older generations, one, because I think it's true, like I'm in the older generations, but like two, because it's good for us to be thinking about the next generation. And this is one of the things that I did ever since I was like 16 years old, and I got my driver's license back in Mahoopany, Pennsylvania. And I was driving around this 1984 Ford Ranger, brown with an orange racing stripe. It was a standard, okay? So this is old school, right? And I remember the first time I drove on my own, I dropped my mom off at work, and then there was a nice straightaway right on 87. And no, I did not go the speed limit. It was fun. But I remember that. I remember thinking to myself, I would look around at the other people in the cars. As a 16-year-old, I was always doing that. Just seeing like who they were and all that kind of stuff. And then, as I got older, I started looking around, and the thing that I do, which I still do to this day, is I look around and go, I wonder, is that person older than me or younger than me? Right? Have you ever thought, has anybody ever played this game? It's a terrible game to play. Now it's a terrible game to play. Because we live in Hebron, and the average age in Hebron is something like 30, 31. So it's a really young area. And so this game is like, oh, younger, look older, but probably younger. You know, like, it was like, and then like, this is like, everybody's younger. And so, like, in a sense, I'm like, oh, I'm the older generation. But everybody that I see in those cars that is in that younger generation are people that Jesus died for, people that we need to reach with the gospel. Those younger generations absolutely matter. And every time we see these signs, these cars with like, be patient, I'm a student driver, something like that, that's a generation that God is trying to reach. So one, don't run them down with your vehicle. And two, you pray for them. These are the people that we're here to reach with the gospel. Now, there's a third thing that I want you to see from the text this morning. Jesus wants to reach the next generation. We look at the Old Testament, we look at some of the stories about what God's done, but when we look in the New Testament, in the Gospels, we see that Jesus wants to reach the next generation as well. In Matthew 18, verses 10 to 14, we see that to be the case. Jesus says this, "See that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven. What do you think if a man owns 100 sheep?" You're like, oh man, I've heard this story. If you've been in our teaching series, you've heard this story. That's because we did the Luke's account version of this recently. But this is Matthew's account. And notice how this account is tied to Jesus' first words, "See that you do not despise the little ones." What do you think? If a man owns 100 sheep and one of them wanders away, will he not leave the 99 on the hills and go look for the one that wandered off? And if he finds it, truly I tell you, he is happier about that one sheep than about the 99 that did not wander off. In the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should perish. If you go to the end of Luke's gospel, to the parable of the prodigal son or the lost son, that is actually about one generation rejoicing about another generation coming back to the Lord. You cannot help but see in this text that the lost ones, the people that we're trying to reach, the ones include the younger generation, or maybe even primarily the younger generation. Jesus wants to reach the younger generation. Jesus has a way of thinking about children. Jesus has a way of thinking about students that is a loving way, that he loves and cares and desires them to know more about him so that they will experience him. We, as the older generations, are tasked with it's not even really a responsibility, it's a privilege to be able to take that to them. Kids and students, the next generation, you all are on the mind and heart of Jesus. And so I just want to say to us as a church, pursue the next generation. Because pursuing the next generation isn't something that is superimposed on the text. It flows out of the text. It flows out of the mission of Jesus. It's the core of who Jesus is, and it should be the core of who we are as a church. It doesn't mean that the younger generations are better or that they're more important. That's not true at all. All generations are important. But that there's a specific focus that we see within the mission of Jesus to reaching younger generations. Now, I want to talk about that as it applies to us as a church. I'm super grateful for our leaders in our student ministry. I'm super grateful for our leaders in our kids ministry. And they have given sacrificially of their time and resources to love our students and to love our kids. But I would also say this, and this has been something we've talked about in some of our strategy nights as a church, that we're praying that God will raise up more people to help us in leading our students and leading our kids. Because they are valuable and they matter, and reaching them is important. And so we've been praying for that. The leaders, Mike and I have been praying that for over the course of the summer, and our staff has been praying that way as well. And I know that some of you as parents who are part of that strategy night were probably praying for that too, and we want you to continue to pray for that. There are conversations happening with a bunch of different people. I've had 2 today about the potential of jumping in and helping with our students and helping with our kids because they matter. And I want to chase one other rabbit. Is that the right way? Is that the proper context? Go down a rabbit hole, chase a bunny, whatever, insert analogy that you would like in that moment. So we are excited for Mount Zion. They're going to be building a double gym and a dedicated worship center for students. And you might be thinking, if you're a student here at our campus, you're like, there's not a double gym here, or there's not a worship center here. We actually are meeting in a 12 by 15 multi-purpose room. So we've got 180 square feet of dedicated space. Woohoo! Is there more? Well, I'm going to say two things to that. We can reach students in an 180 square foot space. There's people in third world countries doing it all the time. Now, obviously, this is a different culture, different context. It's harder. But also at the same time, we're also thinking about resources and ways and potential for us to be able to expand our space for students. And I would encourage you to pray about that and ask the Lord to work in that. Because we are working hard in different conversations, and we've had multiple conversations this week and last week, and it's an ongoing dialogue about how do we do that for our students. And one of the interesting things about this is as you give to the For the One initiative, even as we talk about the giving is dedicated toward the things that we've talked about, but remember, for our campus, as you give to the For the One initiative, you actually better position our campus for some of the things that we will try to do in reaching students that we don't even actually have up on a board somewhere yet. Opportunities that come our way for potentially additional space that we don't even know about or haven't actually come to fruition yet. But because of your generosity, we are going to be able to hit those opportunities, whereas we might just have to pass if it were not for your generosity. Another way to say this is that sometimes we give in faith, not always knowing exactly what's going to happen in the future. And I don't always like to do that. I'm a terrible person at commitment, and so I don't like to commit. You got to tell me everything before I'm going to commit to anything, right? And I'm just the worst guy, and even then I'm going to commit about 12 hours before the event, right? So you see the amount of times that we as a church staff don't sign up for church events. That's the sweet spot of us, right? So we just sometimes struggle with that, right, for different reasons. But what I'm saying is that sometimes we commit because we trust the Lord. Sometimes we commit because we don't always know what that's going to go to, but God's going to do greater things than we can even imagine. Your generosity in this moment goes to the things that we've talked to you about, but it also positions us to be able to go get things in the future. This building we didn't know about this building until we knew about it, and then we were able to act upon it real quickly as a result of people being generous. That's my point. So we're grateful for what God has done with our student ministry and our leaders in our student ministry. We're grateful for our kids ministry and what God's doing in our kids ministry. We're praying for more people to come and be a part and serving in those. And then we're also praying for what the Lord will do in the future, because we want to reach people, because God wants us to reach the next generation. Jesus loves the next generation. Now, as I said before, our kids have been actually participating with us in this For the One initiative. And in the kids' ministry programming, they've been actually walking through this. And last week, the kids actually had their Commitment Sunday. And so we're going to show you a little bit of their Commitment Sunday and them leading us in that process in this video. Check it out.
Today is Commitment Sunday for our student ministry, and it is a special day. Students are turning in their commitment cards today, and then really the cool thing is that we are coming outside and spending time praying over our gym and spending time praying over our student worship space. And students are going to be spread all throughout the grassy field that you see behind me, and just praying for the construction, praying for the people currently at Florence Baptist Church, and praying for the people that are not here yet, right? For the One is all about the people that are not here. It's how can we go be a light in our community and be a place where people can come and hear the good news of the gospel. And so students are going to be spending time praying over that today. It's going to be a special day.
Today, as part of our time together, we went outside and circled up on the land where our new kids building will be. It was a sweet time where we got to have our kids pray for their friends that they're going to invite to fill up the building, and a sweet time to pray over what God has in store.
As you can see, this last Sunday was an incredible morning for our kids and students. And that evening, we invited adults to be a part of early commitment night. Back in the spring, our whole church family were invited to be a part of our vision events, where Travis explained the future of our church. Everyone who attended a vision night were invited back to be a part of early commitment night. At early commitment night, adults were invited to sing, to pray, and to make their early commitment as they believe in the vision of our church and the direction that we're going. 1 Chronicles 29:6 says this, "Then the leaders of the household, the leaders of the tribes of Israel, the commanders of thousands and of hundreds, and the officials in charge of the king's work gave willingly." And that's exactly what happened at early commitment night. We want to invite you to be a part of what God is doing, and don't miss next Sunday, September 7th, to be a part of Commitment Sunday. We're so excited to see what God is doing in our church, and we want to invite you to be a part of it.
And so, as we have told you, we want to pray together as a church family and give you space to be able to pray silently in your chairs, just as you're asking the Lord, what would you have us to do? How would you have us give? How can we participate in this? And if you're newer to the Church of Hebron, as I've said last week, just, it's good for you to know the direction that we are going as a church, but please do not feel compelled in any way to give in any point in this process. Just want you to kind of get a sense of where we are as a church. And so we're just going to give us a couple minutes here of silent prayer, and then I'm going to pray, and then we're going to continue in singing.